Welcome everyone. Hope you're all having a good Tuesday. Back with another reading stream. I don't know if I'm going to be able to do another reading stream this week. I'm going to try for one on Thursday. If not, then it'll be next week. But I'm going to try reading 2 chapters tonight because there's only 4 more chapters left in the Fellowship of the Ring, and I'm going to try to get these 2 done together because it's the Lothlorien chapters. And I figure keep them together rather than separate them. And then maybe if I can do another reading stream this Thursday, finish up Fellowship of the Ring this week. If not, then it'll definitely be next week. Right now we find ourselves in Lothlorien, or Lorien, and we're at chapter 12, and it's entitled "The Mirror of Galadriel." All right, so we'll be meeting the Lord and Lady of the Woods of Lorien. You know, the actual Lord and Lady that Rings of Power does not care about to get accurate, nor does it care to actually, I don't know, make sense of the actual lore. But it is what it is. Anyway, thank you, chaps. Anyway, chapter 12, The Mirror of Galadriel. The sun was sinking behind the mountains, and the shadows were deepening in the woods when they went on again. Their paths now went into thickets where the dusk had already gathered. Night came beneath the trees as they walked, and the elves uncovered their silver lamps. Suddenly, they came out into the open again and found themselves under a pale evening sky, pricked by a few early stars. There was a wide, treeless space before them, running in a great circle and bending away on either hand. Beyond it was a deep fosse, lost in soft shadow, but the grass upon its brink was green, as if it glowed still in memory of the sun that had gone. Upon the further side, there rose to a great height a green wall encircling a green hill, thronged with the malorn trees taller than any they had seen yet in all the land. Their height could not be guessed, but they stood up in the twilight like living towers. In their many-tiered branches and amid their ever-moving leaves countless lights were gleaming, green and gold and silver. Haldir turned towards the company. "Welcome to Caras Galadhon," he said. "Here is the city of the Galadriel, where dwell the Lord Celeborn and Galadriel, the Lady of Lorien. But we cannot enter here, for the gates do not look northward. We must go round to the southern side, and the way is not short, for the city is great." Welcome, everyone. There was a road paved with white stone running on the outer brink of the fosse. Along this they went westward, with the city ever climbing up like a green cloud upon their left. And as the night deepened, more light sprang forth, until all the hills seemed afire with stars. They came at last to a white bridge, and crossing found the great gates of the city. They faced southwest. Set between the ends of the encircling wall, that here overlapped, and they were tall and strong, and hung with many lamps. Haldir knocked and spoke, and the gates opened soundlessly. But the gates shut behind them. Of guards Frodo could see no sign. Travelers passed within, and the gates shut behind them. They were in a deep lane between the ends of the wall, and passing quickly through it, they entered the city of the trees. No folk could they see, nor hear any feet upon the paths. But there were many voices about them, and in the air above. Far away up on the hill, they could hear the sound of singing falling from on high like soft rain upon leaves. They went along many paths, and climbed many stairs, until they came to the high places and saw before them, amid a wide lawn, a fountain shimmering. It was lit by silver lamps that swung from the boughs of trees, and they fell into a basin of silver, from which a white stream spilled. Upon the south side of the lawn there stood the mightiest of all the trees. Its great smooth bole gleamed like gray silk, and up it towered until its first branches, far above, opened their huge limbs under shadowy clouds of leaves. Beside it a broad white ladder stood, and at its foot 3 elves were seated. They sprang up as the travelers approached, and Frodo saw they were tall and clad in grey mail, and from their shoulders hung long white cloaks. "Here dwell Celeborn and Galadriel," said Haldir. "It is their wish that you should ascend and speak with them." One of the elf wardens then blew a clear note on a small horn, and it was answered 3 times from far above. "I will go first," said Haldir. "Let Frodo come next, and with him Legolas. The others may follow as they wish. It is a long climb for those that are not accustomed to such stairs, but you may rest upon the way." As he climbed slowly up, Frodo passed many flets, some on one side, some on another, and some set about the bole of the tree, so that the latter passed through them. At a great height above the ground he came to a wide talon, like the deck of a great ship. On it was built a house, so large that almost it would have served for a hall of men upon the earth. He entered behind Haldir, and found that he was in a chamber of oval shape, in the midst of which grew the trunk of the great Malorn, now tapering towards its crown, and yet making still a pillar of wide girth. The chamber was filled with a soft light. Its walls were green and silver, and its roof of gold. Many elves were seated there. On 2 chairs beneath the bole of the tree, and canopied by a living bough, they sat, side by side, Celeborn and Galadriel. They stood up to greet their guests, after the manner of the elves, even those who were accounted mighty kings. Very tall they were, and the lady no less tall than the lord, and they were grave and beautiful. They were clad wholly in white, and the hair of the lady was of deep gold, and the hair of the Lord Celeborn was of silver long and bright. But no sign of age was upon them, unless it were in the depths of their eyes, for these were keen as lances in the starlight, and yet profound the wells of deep memory. Haldir led Frodo before them, and the Lord welcomed him in his own tongue. Lady Galadriel said no word, but looked long upon his face. "Sit now beside my chair, Frodo of the Shire," said Celeborn. "When all have come, we will speak together." Each of the companions he greeted courteously by name as they entered. "Welcome, Aragorn, son of Arathorn," he said. "It is 38 years of the world outside since you came to this land, and those years lie heavy on you. But the end is near, for good or ill. Here lay aside your burden for a while. Welcome, son of Thranduil. Too seldom do my kindred journey hither from the north. Welcome, Gimli, son of Gloin. It is long indeed since we saw one of Durin's folk in Caras Galadon, but today we have broken our long law. May it be a sign that, though the world is now dark, better days are at hand, and that friendship shall be renewed between our peoples." Gimli bowed low. When all the guests were seated before his chair, the Lord looked at them again. "Here there are 8, he said. 9 were set out. So said the messages. But maybe there has been some changes of counsel that we have not heard. Elrond is far away, and darkness gathers between us, and all the year the shadows have grown longer." "Nay, there was no change of counsel," said the Lady Galadriel, speaking for the first time. Her voice was clear and musical, but deeper than woman's wont. "Gandalf the Grey set out with the company, but he did not pass the borders of this land. Now tell us where he is, for I much desire to speak with him again. But I cannot see him from afar, unless he comes within the fences of Lothlorien. A grey mist is about him, and the ways of his feet and of his mind are hidden from me." "Alas," said Aragorn, "Gandalf the Grey fell into shadow. He remained in Moria and did not escape." At these words, all the elves in the hall cried aloud in grief and amazement. "These are evil tidings," said Celeborn, "the most evil that have been spoken here in long years, full of grievous deeds." He turned to Haldir. "Why has nothing of this been told to me before?" he asked in the elven tongue. "We have not spoken to Haldir of our deeds or our purpose," said Legolas. "At first we were weary and danger was too close behind, and afterwards we almost forgot our grief for a time, as we walked in gladness on the fair paths of Lorien. Yet our grief is great, and our loss cannot be mended," said Frodo. "Gandalf was our guide, and he led us through Moria, and when our escape seemed beyond hope, he saved us, and he fell." "Tell us now the full tale," said Celeborn. Then Aragorn recounted all that had happened upon the pass of Caradhras, and in the days that followed, and he spoke of Balin and his book, and the fight in the chamber of Mazarbul, and the fire, and the narrow bridge, and the coming of the terror. "An evil of the ancient world, it seemed, such as I have never seen before," said Aragorn. "It was both a shadow and a flame, strong and terrible." "It was a Balrog of Morgoth," said Legolas, "of all elf banes, the most deadly, save the one who sits in the dark tower." Again, welcome everyone. I believe so, damn. "Indeed, I saw upon the bridge that which haunts our darkest dreams. I saw Durin's bane," said Gimli in a low voice, and dread was in his eyes. "Alas," said Celeborn, "we long have feared that under Caladhras a terror slept. But had I known that the dwarves had stirred up this evil in Moria again, I would have forbidden you to pass the northern borders, you and all that went with you. and if it were possible, one would say that at last Gandalf fell from wisdom into folly, going needlessly into the net of Moria. He would be rash indeed that said that thing, said Galadriel gravely. Needless were none of the deeds of Gandalf in life. Those that followed him knew not his mind and cannot report his full purpose. But however it may be, with the guide, the followers were blameless. Do not repent of your welcome to the dwarf. If our folk had been exiled long and far from Lothlorien, who of the Galadriel, even Celeborn the Wise, would pass nigh, and would not wish to look upon their ancient home, though it had become an abode of dragons. Dark is the water of Caladsaram, and cold are the springs of Gibil Nala, and fair were the many-pillared halls of Khazad-dûm in elder days, before the fall of mighty kings beneath the stone. She looked upon Gimli, who sat glowering and sad, and she smiled. And the dwarf, hearing the names given in his own ancient tongue, looked up and met her eyes, and it seemed to him that he had looked suddenly into the heart of an enemy, and saw their love and understanding. Wonder came into his face, and then he smiled in answer. He rose clumsily and bowed in dwarf fashion, saying, Yet more fair is the living land of Lorien, and the Lady Galadriel is above all the jewels that lie beneath the earth. There was a silence. At length Celeborn spoke again. I did not know that your plight was so evil, he said. Let Gimli forget my harsh words. I spoke in the trouble of my heart. I will do what I can to aid you, each according to his wish and need, but especially that one of the little folk who bears the burden. Your quest is known to us, said Galadriel, looking at Frodo, but we will not here speak of it more openly. Yet not in vain will it prove, maybe, that you came in this land seeking aid, as Gandalf himself plainly purposed. For the Lord of the Galadriel is accounted the wisest of the elves of Middle-earth, and a giver of gifts beyond the power of kings. He has dwelt in the west since the days of dawn, and I have dwelt with him years unaccounted. For ere the fall of Nargothrond or Gondolin, I passed over the mountains, and together through ages of the world we have fought the long defeat. It was who first summoned the White Council, and if my designs had not gone amiss, it would have been governed by Gandalf the Grey, and then mayhap things would have gone otherwise. But even now there is hope left. I will not give you counsel, saying do this or do that. For not in doing or contriving, nor in choosing between this course and another, can I avail, but only in knowing what was and is, and in part also what shall be. But this I will say to you, your quest stands upon the edge of a knife. Stray but a little, and it will fail, to the ruin of all. Yet hope remains while all the company is true. And with that word she held them in her eyes, and in silence looked searchingly at each of them in turn. None save Legolas and Aragorn could long endure her glance. Sam quickly blushed and hung his head. At length the Lady Galadriel released them from her eyes, and she smiled. Do not let your hearts be troubled, she said. Tonight you shall sleep in peace. Then they sighed and felt suddenly weary, as those who have been questioned long and deeply, though no words have been spoken openly. Go now, said Celeborn. You are worn with sorrow and much toil. Even if your quest did not concern us closely, you should have refuge in this city, unless you were healed and refreshed. Until you were healed and refreshed. Now you shall rest, and we will not speak of your further road for a while. Welcome, everyone. That night the company slept upon the ground, much to the satisfaction of the hobbits. The elves spread for them a pavilion among the trees near the fountain, and in it they laid soft couches. Then, speaking words of peace with fair elvish voices, they left them. For a little while the travelers talked of their night before in the treetops, and of their day's journey, and of the Lord and Lady, for they had not yet the heart to look further back. What did you blush for, Sam? Said Pippin. You soon broke down. Anyone would have thought you were guilty, had a guilty conscience. I hope it was nothing worse than a wicked plot to steal one of my blankets. I never thought no such thing, answered Sam in no mood for jest. If you want to know, I felt as if I hadn't got nothing on, and I didn't like it. She seemed to be looking inside me and asking me what I would do if she gave me the chance of flying back home to the Shire to a nice little hole with a bit of garden of my own. That's funny, said Mary. Almost exactly what I felt myself. Only, well, I don't think I'll say any more, he ended lamely. All of them, it seemed, had fared alike. Each had felt that he was offered a choice between a shadow full of fear that lay ahead and something that he greatly desired. Clear before his mind it lay, and to get it he had only to turn aside from the road and leave the quest and the war against Sauron to others. And it seemed to me, too, said Gimli, that my choice would remain secret and known only to myself. To me it seemed exceedingly strange, said Boromir. Maybe it was only a test, and she thought to read our thoughts for her own good purpose. But almost I should have said that she was tempting us, and offering what she pretended to have the power to give. It need not be said that I refused to listen. The men of Minas Tirith are true to their word, but what he thought that the lady had offered him, Boromir did not tell. As for Frodo, he would not speak, though Boromir pressed him with questions. She held you long in her gaze, Ring-bearer, he said. Yes, said Frodo, but whatever came into my mind, that I will keep there. Well, have a care, said Boromir. I do not feel too sure of this elvish lady and her purposes. Speak no evil of the Lady Galadriel, said Aragorn sternly. You know not what you say. There is in her and in this land no evil, unless a man bring it hither himself. Then let him beware. But tonight I shall sleep without fear for the first time since I left Rivendell. And may I sleep deep, and forget for a while my grief. I am weary in body and in heart. He cast himself down upon his couch and fell at once into a long sleep. The others soon did the same, and no sound or dream disturbed their slumber. When they woke they found that the light of day was broad upon the lawn before the pavilion, and the fountain rose and fell glittering in the sun. They remained some days in Lothlorien, so far as they could tell or remember. All the while they dwelt there, the sun shone clear, save for a gentle rain that fell at times, and passed away, leaving all things fresh and clean. The air was cool and soft, as if it were early spring, yet they felt about them the deep and thoughtful quiet of winter. It seemed to them that they did but little but eat and drink and rest, and walk among the trees, and it was enough. They had not seen the Lord and Lady again, and they had little speech with the elven folk, for few of these knew or would use the western tongue. Haldir had bidden them farewell and gone back again to the fences of the north, where great watch was now kept since the tidings of Moria that the company had brought. Legolas was away much among the Galadriel, and after the first night he did not sleep with the other companions, though he returned to eat and talk with them. Often he took Gimli with him when he went abroad in the land, and the others wondered at this change. Now as the companions sat or walked together they spoke of Gandalf, and all that each had known and seen of him came clear before their minds. As if they were healed of hurt and weariness of body, the grief of their loss grew more keen. Often they heard nearby elvish voices singing, and knew that they were making songs of lamentation for his fall, for they caught his name among the sweet and sad words that they could not understand. Mithrandir, Mithrandir, sang the elves, O pilgrim grey, for so they loved to call him. But if Legolas was with the company, he would not interpret the songs for them, saying that he had not the skill, and that for him the grief was still too near, a matter for tears and not yet for song. It was Frodo who first put something of his sorrow into halting words. He was seldom moved to make song or rhyme. Even in Rivendell, he had listened and had not sung himself, though his memory was stored with many things that others had made before him. Now as he sat beside the fountain of Lorien, and heard about him the voices of the elves, his thoughts took shape in a song that seemed fair to him. Yet when he tried to repeat it to Sam, only snatches remained, faded as a handful of withered leaves. When evening in the Shire was grey, his footsteps on the hill were heard. Before the dawn he went away, on journey long without a word. From wilder land to western shore, from northern waste to southern hill, through dragon lair and hidden door, and darkling woods he walked at will. With dwarf and hobbit, elves and men, with mortal and immortal folk, with bird on bough and beast in den, in their own secret tongues he spoke. A deadly sword, a healing hand, a back that bent beneath its load, a trumpet voice, a burning brand, a weary pilgrim on the road. A lord of wisdom, throned he sat, swift in anger, quick to laugh. An old man in a battered hat, who leaned upon a thorny staff. He stood upon the bridge alone, and fire and shadow both defied. His staff was broken on the stone, and Khazad-dûm his wisdom died. Why, you'll be beating Mr. Bilbo next, said Sam. No, I'm afraid not, said Frodo, but that is the best I can do yet. Well, Mr. Frodo, if you do have another go, I hope you'll say a word about his fireworks, said Sam. Something like this. Welcome, everyone. The finest rockets ever seen, they burst in stars of blue and green, or after thunder golden showers came falling like a rain of flowers. Though that doesn't do them justice by a long road. No, I'll leave that to you, Sam, or perhaps to Bilbo. But, well, I can't talk of it any more. I can't bear to think of bringing the news to him. One evening, Frodo and Sam were walking together in the cool twilight. Both of them felt restless again. On Frodo, suddenly, the shadow of parting had fallen. He knew somehow that the time was very near when he must leave Lothlorien. "What do you think of elves now, Sam?" he said. "I asked you the same question once before. It seemed a long while ago, but you have seen more of them since then." "I have indeed," said Sam, "and I reckon there's elves and elves. They're all elvish enough, but they're not all the same. Now these folk aren't wanderers or homeless, and seem a bit nearer to the likes of us. They seem to belong here, more even than hobbits do in the Shire. Whether they've made it the land, or the land's made them, it's hard to say, if you take my meaning. It's wonderfully quiet here. Nothing seems to be going on, and nobody seems to wanted to, sorry. If there's any magic about, it's right down deep, where I can't lay my hands on it in a manner of speaking." "You can see and feel it everywhere," said Frodo. "Well," said Sam, "you can't see nobody working it. No fireworks like poor old Gandalf used to show. I wonder we don't see nothing of the Lord and Lady in all these days. I fancy now that she could do some wonderful things if she had a mind. I'd dearly love to see some of elf magic, Mr. Frodo." "I wouldn't," said Frodo. "I'm content. And I don't miss Gandalf's fireworks, but his bushy eyebrows and his quick temper and his voice." "You're right," said Sam. "And don't think that I'm finding fault. I've often wanted to see a bit of magic like what it tells of in old tales. But I've never heard of a better land than this. It's like being at home and on a holiday at the same time, if you understand me. I don't want to leave. All the same, I'm beginning to feel as if we got to go on. Then we'd best get it over. It's the job that's never started, it takes longest to finish, as my old gaffer used to say. And I don't reckon that these folks can do much more to help us, magic or no. It's when we leave this land that we shall miss Gandalf worse, I'm thinking." "I'm afraid that's only too true, Sam," said Frodo. "Yet I hope very much that before we leave we shall see the Lady of the Elves again." Even as he spoke, they saw, as if she came in answer to their words, the Lady Galadriel approaching. Tall and white and fair, she walked beneath the trees. She spoke no word, but beckoned to them. Turning aside, she led them towards the southern slopes of the hill of Caras-Caradon, and passing through a high green hedge, they came into an enclosed garden. No trees grew there, and it lay open to the sky. The evening star had risen and was shining with a white fire about the western woods. Down a long flight of steps, the lady went into the deep green hollow, through which ran murmuring the silver stream that issued from the fountain on the hill. At the bottom, upon a low pedestal carved like a branching tree, stood a basin of silver, wide and shallow, and beside it stood a silver ewer. With water from the stream, Galadriel filled the basin to the brim, and breathed on it, and when the water was still again, she spoke. "Here is the mirror of Galadriel," she said. "I have brought you here so that you may look in it, if you will." The air was very still, and the dell was dark, and the elf lady beside him was tall and pale. "What shall we look for, and what shall we see?" asked Frodo, filled with awe. "Many things I can command the mirror to reveal," she answered, "and to some I can show what they desire to see. But the mirror will also show things unbidden, and those are often stranger and more profitable than things which we wish to behold. What you will see, if you leave the mirror free to work, I cannot tell, for it shows things that were, and things that are, and things that yet may be. But which it is that he sees, even the wisest cannot always tell. Do you wish to look?" Frodo did not answer. "And you," she said, turning to Sam, "for this is what your folk would call magic, I believe, though I do not understand clearly what they mean, and they seem to use the same word of the deceits of the enemy. But this, if you will, is the magic of Galadriel. Did you not say that you wished to see elf magic?" "I did," said Sam, trembling a little between fear and curiosity. "I'll have a peep, lady, if you're willing." "And I'd not mind a glimpse of what's going on at home," he said, in an aside to Frodo. "It seems a terrible long time that I've been away. But there, like as not, I'll only see the stars, or something that I won't understand." "Like as not," said the lady with a gentle laugh. "But come, you shall look and see what you may. Do not touch the water." Sam climbed up on the foot of the pedestal and leaned over the basin. The water looked hard and dark. Stars were reflected in it. "There's only stars as I thought," he said. Then he gave a low gasp, for the stars went out. As if a dark veil had been withdrawn, the mirror grew gray, and then clear. There was sun shining, and the branches of the trees were waving and tossing in the wind. But before Sam could make up his mind what it was that he saw, the light faded. Now he thought he saw Frodo with a pale face lying fast asleep under a great dark cliff. Then he seemed to see himself going along a dim passage and climbing an endless winding stair. It came to him suddenly that he was looking urgently for something, but what it was he did not know. Like a dream, the vision shifted and went back, and he saw the trees again. But this time they were not so close, and he could see what was going on. They were not waving in the wind, they were falling, crashing to the ground. "Hi!" cried Sam in an outraged voice. "There's that Ted Sandyman, a-cutting down trees as he shouldn't. They didn't ought to be felled. It's that avenue beyond the mill that shades the road to Bywater. I wish I could get at Ted, and I'd fell him." But now Sam noticed that the old mill had vanished, and a large red brick building was being put up where it had stood. Lots of folk were busily at work. There was a tall red chimney nearby. Black smoke seemed to cloud the surface of a mirror. "There's some devilry at work in the Shire," he said. Elrond knew what he was about when he wanted to send Mr. Merry back. Then suddenly Sam gave a cry and sprang away. "I can't stay here," he said wildly. "I must go home. They've dug up Bagshot Row, and there's the poor old gaffer going down the hill with his bits of things on a barrow. I must go home." "You cannot go home alone," said the lady. "You did not wish to go home without your master before you looked in the mirror, and that you knew that evil things might well be happening in the Shire. Remember that the mirror shows many things, and not all have yet come to pass. Some never come to be, unless those that behold the visions turn aside from their path to prevent them. The mirror is dangerous as a guide of deeds." Sam sat on the ground and put his head in his hands. "I wish I had never come here, and I do not want to go see more magic," he said, and fell silent. After a moment he spoke again thickly, as if struggling with tears. "No, I'll go home by the long road with Mr. Frodo, or not at all," he said. "But I hope I do not go back. But I hope I do get back someday. If what I've seen turns out true, somebody's going to catch it hot." "Do you now wish to look, Frodo?" said the Lady Galadriel. "You did not wish to see elf magic and were content." "Do you advise me to look?" asked Frodo. "No," she said. "I do not counsel you one way or the other. I am not a counselor. You may learn something, and whether what you see be fair or evil, that may be profitable, and yet it may not. Seeing is both good and perilous. Yet I think, Frodo, that you have courage and wisdom enough for the venture, or I would not have brought you here. Do as you will." "I will look," said Frodo, and he climbed on a pedestal and bent over the dark water. At once the mirror cleared, and he saw a twilight land. Mountains loomed in dark in the distance against a pale sky. A long gray road wound back out of sight. Far away, a figure came slowly down the road, faint and small at first, but growing larger and clearer as it approached. Suddenly Frodo realized that it reminded him of Gandalf. He almost called aloud the wizard's name, and then he saw that the figure was clothed not in gray, but in white. And a white that shone faintly in the dusk, and in his hand there was a white staff. The head was bowed so they could see no face, and presently the figure turned aside round a bend in the road and went out of the mirror's view. Doubt came into Frodo's mind. Was this a vision of Gandalf on one of his many lonely journeys long ago? Or was it Saruman? The vision now changed. Brief and small, but very vivid, he caught a glimpse of Bilbo, walking restlessly about his room. The table was littered with disordered papers. Rain was beating on the windows. Then there was a pause, and after it many swift scenes followed that Frodo in some way knew to be parts of great history in which he had become involved. The mist cleared, and he saw a sight which he had never seen before, but knew at once. The sea. Darkness fell. The sea rose and raged in a great storm, and he saw against the sun, sinking blood-red into a rack of clouds, the black outline of a tall ship with torn sails riding up out of the west. Then a wide river flowing through a populous city. Then a white fortress with 7 towers. And then again a ship with black sails, but now it was morning again, and the water rippled with light, and a banner bearing the emblem of a white tree shone in the sun. A smoke as of fire, and battle rose. And against the sun went down in a burning red that faded into a gray mist. And into the mist the small ship passed away, twinkling with lights. It vanished, and Frodo sighed and prepared to draw away. Yes, Silmarillion would be a very tall order. But suddenly the mirror went altogether dark as if a hole had opened in the world of sight, and Frodo looked into emptiness. In the black abyss there appeared a single eye that slowly grew until it filled nearly all the mirror. So terrible was it that Frodo stood rooted, unable to cry out or to withdraw his gaze. The eye was rimmed with fire, but itself glazed, yellow as a cat's eye, as cat's, watchful and intent, and the black slit of his pupil opened on a pit, a window into nothing. Then the eye began to rove, searching this way and that, and Frodo knew with certainty and horror that among the many things that it sought, he himself was one. But he also knew that it could not see him, not unless he willed it. The ring that hung upon its chain about his neck grew heavier than a great stone, and his head was dragged downwards. The mirror seemed to be growing hot, and curling of steam was rising from the water. He was slipping forward. "Do not touch the water," said the Lady Galadriel softly. The vision faded, and Frodo found that he was looking at the cool stars twinkling in the silver basin. He sat back shaking all over and looked at the lady. I doubt we'll get a faithful adaptation, JM. "I know what it was that you last saw," she said, "for that is also in my mind. Do not be afraid. We do not think that only by singing amid the trees, nor even by the slender arrows of elven bows, is this land of Lothlorien maintained and defended against the enemy. I say to you, Frodo, that even as I speak to you, I perceive the Dark Lord and know his mind, or all of his mind that concerns the elves, and he gropes ever to see me in my thought. But still the door is closed." She lifted up her white arms and spread out her hands towards the east in a gesture of rejection and denial. Eärendil, the evening star, most beloved of the elves, shone clear above. So bright was it that the figure of the elven lady cast a dim shadow on the ground. Its rays glanced upon a ring about her finger. It glittered like polished gold, overlaid with silver light, and a white stone in it twinkled as if the evening star had come down to rest upon her hand. Frodo gazed at the ring with awe, for suddenly it seemed to him that he understood. "Yes," she said, divining his thought, "it is not permitted to speak of it, and Elrond could not do so. But it cannot be hidden from the ring-bearer, and one who has seen the eye. Verily it is the land of Lorien upon the finger of Galadriel that one of the three remains. This is Nenya, the ring of adamant, and I am its keeper." He suspects, but he does not know, not yet. "Do you not see now wherefore your coming to us as the footstep of doom? For if you fail, then we are laid bare to the enemy. Yet if you succeed, then our power is diminished, and Lothlorien will fade, and the tides of time will sweep it away. We must depart into the west, or dwindle to a rustic folk of dell and cave, slowly to forget and to be forgotten." Frodo bent his head. "And what do you wish?" he said at last. "That what should be shall be," she answered. "The love of the elves for their land and their works is deeper than the deeps of the sea, and their regret is undying and cannot ever wholly be assuaged. Yet they will cast all away rather than submit to Sauron, for they know him now. For the fate of Lothlorien you are not answerable, but only for the doing of your own task. Yet I could wish, were it of any avail, that the One Ring had never been wrought, or had remained forever lost." "You are wise and fearless and fair, Lady Galadriel," said Frodo. "I will give you the One Ring, if you ask for it. It is too great a matter for me." Galadriel laughed with a sudden clear laugh. "Wise the Lady Galadriel may be," she said, "yet here she has met her match in the courtesy. Gently are you revenged for my testing of your heart at our first meeting. You begin to see with a keen eye. I do not deny that my heart has greatly desired to ask what you will offer. For many long years I had pondered what I might do should the great ring come into my hands, and behold, it was brought within my grasp. The evil that was devised long ago works on in many ways, whether Sauron himself stands or falls. Would not that have been a noble deed to set the credit of his ring, if I had taken it by force or fear for my guest. And now, at last it comes. You will give me the ring freely. In place of the Dark Lord, you will set up a queen, and I shall not be dark, but beautiful and terrible as the morning and the night, fair as the sea and the sun and the snow upon the mountain, dreadful as the storm and the lightning, stronger than the foundations of the earth. All shall love me and despair." She lifted up her hand, and from the ring that she wore were issued a great light that illuminated her alone and left all else dark. She stood before Frodo, seeming now tall beyond measurement, and beautiful beyond enduring, terrible and worshipful. Then she let her hand fall, and the light faded, and suddenly she laughed again, and lo, she was shrunken, a slender elf woman clad in simple white, whose gentle voice was soft and sad. I passed the test, she said. I will diminish and go into the west and remain Galadriel. Dan, you're luckier of Maud. They stood for a long while in silence. At length the lady spoke again. Let us return, she said. In the morning you must depart, for now we have chosen and the tides of fate are flowing. I would ask one thing before we go, said Frodo, a thing which I often meant to ask Gandalf and Rivendell. I am permitted to wear the One Ring. Why cannot I see all the others and know the thoughts of those that wear them? You have not tried, she said. Only thrice have you let the ring upon your finger, since you knew what you possessed. Do not try. It will destroy you. Did not Gandalf tell you that the rings gave power according to the measure of each possessor? Before you could use that power, you would need to become far stronger and to train your will to the domination of others. But even so, as a ring bearer, and as one that has borne it on a finger, and seen that which is hidden, your sight is grown keener. You have perceived my thought more clearly than many that are counted wise. You saw the eye of him that beholds the 7 and the 9. And did you not see and recognize the ring upon my finger? Did you see my ring? She asked, turning again to Sam. No, lady, he answered. To tell you the truth, I wondered what you were talking about. I saw a star through your fingers. But if you'll pardon my speaking out, I think my master was right. I wish he'd take his ring. You'd put things to rights. You'd stop them digging up the gaffer and turning him adrift. You'd make some folk pay for their dirty work. I would, she said. That is how it would begin. But would not stop with that, alas. We will not speak more of it. Let us go. And that ends chapter 12. Sorry, I need to take a little swig of water before I begin chapter 13, where we say farewell to Lorien. So, again, welcome everyone. Chapter 13. Farewell to Lorien. Welcome everyone. That night the company was again summoned to the chamber of Celeborn, and there the lord and lady greeted them with fair words. At length Celeborn spoke of their departure. Now is the time, he said, when those who wish to continue the quest must harden their hearts to leave this land. Those who no longer wish to go forward may remain here for a while. Whether they stay or go, none can be sure of peace. For we are come now to the edge of doom. Here those who wish may await the oncoming of the hour till either the ways of the world lie open again, or we summon them to the last need of Lorien. Then they may return to their own land, or else go to the long home of those that fall in battle. There was silence. They are all resolved to go forward, said Galadriel, looking in their eyes. As for me, said Boromir, my way home lies onward, and not back. That is true, said Celeborn, but is all this company going with you to Minas Tirith? We have not decided our course, said Aragorn. Beyond Lothlorien, I do not know what Gandalf intended to do. Indeed, I do not think that even he had any clear purpose. Maybe not, said Celeborn. Yet when you leave this land, you can no longer forget the Great River. As some of you know well, it cannot be crossed by travelers with baggage between Lorien and Gondor, save by boats. And are not the bridges of Osgiliath broken down, and all the landings held now by the enemy? On which side will you journey? The way to Minas Tirith lies upon this side, upon the west, but the straight road of the quest lies east of the river, upon the darker shore. Which shore will you now take? If my advice is heeded, it will be the western shore, and the way to Minas Tirith, answered Boromir. But I am not the leader of the company. The others said nothing, and Aragorn looked doubtful and troubled. Dan. I see that you do not yet know what to do, said Celeborn. It is not my part to choose for you, but I will help you as I may. There are some among you who can handle boats. Legolas, whose folk know the swift Forest River, and Boromir of Gondor, and Aragorn the Traveler. And one hobbit, cried Merry. Not all of us look on boats as wild horses. My people live by the banks of the Brandywine. That is well, said Celeborn. Then I will furnish your company with boats. They must be small and light, for if you go far by water, there are places where you will be forced to carry them. You will come to the rapids of Sarn Gabir, and maybe at last to the great falls of Rauros, where the river thunders down the Nen Hithwel, and there are other perils. Boats may make your journey less toilsome for a while, Yet they will not give you counsel. In the end, you must leave them in the river and turn west, or east. Aragorn thanked Celeborn many times. The gift of boats comforted him much, not least because there would now be no need to decide his course for some days. The others, too, looked more hopeful. Whatever perils lay ahead, it seemed better to float down the broad tide of Anduin to meet them than to plod forward with bent backs. Only Sam was doubtful. He, at any rate, still thought boats as bad as wild horses, or worse, and not all the dangers he had survived made him think better of them. All shall be prepared for you, and await you at the haven before noon tomorrow, said Celeborn. I will send my people to you in the morning to help you make ready for the journey. Now we will wish you all a fair night and untroubled sleep. Good night, my friend, said Galadriel. Sleep peace. Do not trouble your hearts overmuch with thought of the road tonight. Maybe the paths you each shall tread are already laid before your feet, though you do not see them. Good night. The company now took their leave and returned to the pavilion. Legolas went with them, for this was to be their last night in Lothlorien, and in spite of the words of Galadriel, they wished to take counsel together. For a long time they debated what they should do, and how it would be best to attempt the fulfilling of their purpose with the ring, but they came to no decision. It was plain that most of them desired to go first to Minas Tirith, and to escape at least for a while from the terror of the enemy. They would have been willing to follow a leader over the river and into the shadow of Mordor, but Frodo spoke no word, and Aragorn was still divided in his mind. His own plan, while Gandalf remained with them, had been to go with Boromir, and with his sword help to deliver Gondor. For he believed that the message of his dreams was the summons, and that the hour had come at last when the heir of Elendil should come forth and strive with Sauron for the mastery. But in Moria, the burden of Gandalf had been laid on him, and he knew that he could not now forsake the ring, if Frodo refused in the end to go with Boromir. And yet, what help could he or any of the company give to Frodo, save to walk blindly with him into the darkness? I shall go to Minas Tirith, alone if need be, for it is my duty, said Boromir, and after that he was silent for a while, sitting with his eyes fixed on Frodo, as if he was trying to read the halfling's thoughts. At length he spoke again, softly, as if he were debating with himself. If you wish only to destroy the ring, he said, then there is little use in war and weapons, and the men of Minas Tirith cannot help. But if you wish to destroy the armed might of the Dark Lord, then it is folly to go without force into his domain, and folly to throw away. He paused suddenly, as if he had become aware that he was speaking his thoughts aloud. It would be folly to throw lives away, I mean, he ended. It is a choice between defending a strong place and walking openly into the arms of death. At least that is how I see it. Frodo caught something new and strange in Boromir's glance, and he looked hard at him. Plainly, Boromir's thoughts was different from his final words. It would be folly to throw away what? The Ring of Power? He had said something like this at the council, but then he had accepted the correction of Elrond. Frodo looked at Aragorn, but he seemed deep in his own thoughts, and made no sign that he had heeded Boromir's words. And so their debate ended. Merry and Pippin were already asleep, and Sam was nodding. The night was growing old. Welcome, everyone. In the morning, as they were beginning to pack their slender goods, elves that could speak their tongue came to them, and brought them many gifts of food and clothing for the journey. Sorry for me, chat. I had to respond to text to my mom. My mom has perfect timing. Sorry about that. Hello, Ian, or Ian, as Mazza puts it. Anyway, let me find where I was. Okay. In the morning, as they were beginning to pack their slender goods, elves that could speak their tongue came to them and brought them many gifts of food and clothing for the journey. The food was mostly in the form of very thin cakes made of a meal that was baked a light brown on the outside, and inside was the color of cream. Gimli took up one of the cakes and looked at it with a doubtful eye. "Cram," he said under his breath, as he broke off a crisp corner and nibbled at it. His expression quickly changed, and he ate all the rest of the cake with relish. Thank you, Ian, for gifting 10 memberships. Very much appreciated. Welcome, everyone. Hope you're all enjoying this. Sorry again, intermission. I cannot spell. And I hate the keyboard on this phone. Okay. "No more, no more," cried the elves, laughing. "You have eaten enough already for a long day's march." "I thought it was only a kind of cram, such as the Dale men make for journeys in the wilds," said the dwarf. "So it is," they answered, "but we call it lembas, or whey bread, and it was more strengthening than any food made by men, and is more pleasant than cram, by all accounts." "Indeed it is," said Gimli. "Why, it is better than the honey cakes of the Beornings, and that is great praise, for the Beornings are the best bakers as I know of, but they are none too willing to deal out their cakes to travelers in these days. You are kindly hosts." "All the same, we bid you spare the food," they said. "Eat little at a time, and only at need, for these things are given to serve you when all else fails. The cakes will keep sweet for many, many days, if they are unbroken and left in their leaf wrappings, as we have brought them. One will keep a traveler on his feet for a day of long labor, even if he be of the tall men of Minas Tirith." The elves next unwrapped and gave each of the company the clothes they had brought. For each they had provided a hood and cloak made according to his size, of the light but warm silken stuff that the Galadriel wove. It was hard to say of what color they were. Gray with the hue of twilight under the trees they seemed to be, and yet if they were moved or set in another light, they were green as shadowed leaves, or brown as fallow fields by night, dusk silver as water under the trees. Each cloak was fastened about the neck with a brooch like a green leaf veined with silver. "Are these magic cloaks?" asked Pippin, looking at them with wonder. "I do not know what you mean by that," answered the leader of the elves. "They are fair garments, and the web is good, for it is made in this land. They are elvish robes, certainly, if that is what you mean. Leaf and branch, water and stone. They have the hue and beauty of all these things under the twilight of Lothlórien that we love. For we put the thought of all that we love into all that we make. Yet they are garments, not armor, and they will not turn shaft or blade, but they should serve you well. They are light to wear and warm enough and cool enough to need. And you will find them a great aid in keeping out of the sight of unfriendly eyes, whether you walk among the stones or the trees. You are indeed high in the favor of the lady, for she herself and her maidens wove this stuff. Never before have we clad strangers in the garb of our own people." After their morning meal, the company said farewell to the lawn by the fountain. Their hearts were heavy, for it was a fair place, and it had become like home to them, though they could not count the days and nights they had passed there. As they stood for a moment, looking at the white water in the sunlight, Haldir came walking towards them, over the green grass of the glade. Frodo greeted him with delight. "I have returned from the northern fences," said the elf, "and I am sent now to be your guide again. The Dimrill Dale is full of vapor and clouds of smoke, and the mountains are troubled. There are noises in the deeps of the earth. If any of you had thought of returning northwards to your homes, you would not have been able to pass that way. But come, your path now goes south." As they walked through Caras-Galadon, the green ways were empty, but in the trees above them many voices were murmuring and singing. They themselves went silently. At last Haldir led them down the southward slopes of the hill, and they came again to the great gates hung with lamps, and to the white bridge, and so they passed out and left the city of the elves. Then they turned away from the paved road and took a path that went off into a deep thicket of mellower trees, and passed on, winding through rolling woodlands of silver shadow, leading them ever down, southwards and eastwards, towards the shores of the river. They had gone some 10 miles, and noon was at hand when they came on a high green wall. Passing through an opening, they came suddenly out of the trees. Before them lay a long lawn of shining grass, studded with golden Eleanor that glinted in the sun. The lawn ran out into a narrow tongue between the bright margins. On the right and west, the silver lode flowed glittering. On the left side, left and east, the great river rolled its broad waters, deep and dark. On the further shores, the woodlands still marched on southwards, as far as eye could see, but all the banks were bleak and bare. No Malern lifted its gold-hung brows beyond the land of Lorien. On the bank of the silver lode, at some distance up from the meeting of the streams, there was a height of white stones and white wood. By it were moored many boats and barges. Some were brightly painted and shone with silver and gold and green, but most were either white or gray. 3 small gray boats had been made ready for the travelers, and in these the elves stowed their goods. And they added also coils of rope, 3 to each boat. Slender they looked, but strong, silken to the touch, gray of hue like the elven cloaks. "What are these?" asked Sam, handling one that lay upon the greensward. "Ropes indeed," answered an elf from the boats. "Never travel far without a rope, and one that is long and strong and light. Such are these. They may be help in many needs." "You don't need to tell me that," said Sam. "I came without any, and I've been worried ever since. But I was wondering what these were made of." "Made of, knowing a bit about rope making. It's in the family, as you might say." "They are made of Hithlang," said the elf, "but there is no time now to instruct you in the art of their making. Had we known that this craft delighted you, we could have taught you much. But now, alas, unless you should at last return hither, you must be content with our gift. May it serve you well." "Come," said Haldir, "all is now ready for you. Enter the boats, but take care at first." "Heed the word," said the other elves. "These boats are light built, and they are crafty and unlike the boats of other folk. They will not sink, lade them as you will, but they are wayward if mishandled. It would be wise if you accustomed yourselves to stepping in and out, here where there is a landing place, before you set off downstream." The company was arranged in this way. Aragorn, Frodo, and Sam were in one boat. Boromir, Merry, and Pippin were in another, and in the third were Legolas and Gimli, who had now become fast friends. In this last boat, most of the goods and packs were stowed. The boats were moved and steered with short-handled paddles that had broad leaf-shaped blades. When all was ready, Aragorn led them on a trial up the silver lode. The current was swift, and they went forward slowly. Sam sat in the bows, clutching the sides, and looking back wistfully to the shore. The sunlight glittering on the water dazzled his eyes. As they passed beyond the green field of the tongue, the trees drew down to the river's bank. Here and there, golden leaves tossed and floated on the rippling stream. The air was very bright and still, and there was a silence except for the high distant song of larks. They turned a sharp bend in the river, and there, sailing proudly down the stream towards them, they saw a swan of great size. The water rippled on either side of the white breast beneath its curving neck. Its beak shone like burnished gold, and its eyes glinted like jet set in yellow stones. Its huge white wings were half lifted. Music came down the river as it drew nearer, and suddenly they perceived that it was a ship, wrought and carved with elven skill in the likeness of a bird. 2 elves clad in white steered with black pedals. In the midst of the vessel sat Celeborn, and behind him stood Galadriel. Tall and white, a circlet of golden flowers was in her hair, and in her hand she held a harp, and she sang. Sad and sweet was the sound of her voice in the cool, clean air. "I sang of leaves of gold, and leaves of gold there grew. Of wind I sang, of wind there came, and in the broad branches blew. Beyond the sun, beyond the moon, the foam was on the sea. And by the strand of Elmarin there grew a golden tree. Beneath the stars of ever eve, in Eldermere it shone, in Eldermar beside the walls of elven Tirion. There long the golden leaves have grown upon the branching years. O here beyond the sundering seas now fall the elven tears. O Lorien, the winter comes, the bare and leafless day. The leaves are falling in the stream, the river flows away. O Lorien, too long I have dwelt upon the hither shore, and in a fading crown have twined the golden Eleanor. But if of ships I now should sing, what ship would come to me? What ship would bear me ever back across so wide a sea?" Aragorn stayed his boat as the swan ship drew alongside. The lady ended her song and greeted them. "We have come to bid you our last farewell," she said, "and to speed you with blessings from our land. Though you have been our guest," said Celeborn, sorry. Yeah. Though you have been our guest at Celeborn, you have not yet eaten with us, and we bid you therefore to a parting feast, here between the flowing waters that will bear you from Lórien. The swan passed on slowly to the height, and they turned their boats and followed it. There in the last end of Egladil, upon the green grass, the parting feast was held. But Frodo ate and drank little, heeding only to the beauty of the lady and her voice. She seemed no longer perilous or terrible, nor filled with hidden power. Already she seemed to him, as by men of later days, elves still at times are seen, present and yet remote, a living vision of that which had already been left far behind by the flowing streams of time. After they had eaten and drunk, sitting upon the grass, Celeborn spoke to them again of their journey, and lifting his hand he pointed south to the woods beyond the tongue. As you go down the water, he said, you will find the trees will fail, and you will come to a barren country. There the river flows in stony vales and amid high moors, until at last, after many leagues, it comes to the tall island of the Tindrock, that we call Tol Brandir. There it casts its arms about the steep shores of the isle, and falls then with a great noise and smoke over the cataracts of Ralros, down onto the Nindelf, the Wet Wang, as it is called in your tongue. That is a wide region of sluggish fen where the stream becomes tortuous and much divided. There the Entwash flows in by many mouths from the forest of Fangorn in the west. About that stream on this side of the great river lies Rohan. On the further side are the bleak hills of the Emmenmuil. The wind blows from the east there, for they look out over the dead marshes, and the no man lands to Kereth Gorgor, and the black gates of Mordor. Boromir, and any that go with them seeking Minas Tirith, will do well to leave the great river above Rauros and cross the Entwash before it finds the marshes. Yet they should not go too far up that stream, nor risk becoming entangled in the forest of Fangorn. That is a strange land, and is now little known. But Boromir and Aragorn doubtless do not need this warning. Indeed, we have heard of Fangorn and Minas Tirith, said Boromir. For what I have heard seems to me, for the most part, of old wives' tales, such as we all tell our children. All that lies north of Rohan is now to us so far away that fancy can wander freely there. Of old Fangorn lay upon the borders of our realm, but it is now many lives of men since any of us visited it, to prove or disprove the legends that have come down from distant years. I have myself been at whiles in Rohan, but I have never crossed it northwards. When I was sent out as a messenger, I passed through the gap by the skirts of the White Mountains, and crossed the Isen and the Great Flood into Northern Land. A long and wearisome journey, 400 leagues I've reckoned it, and it took me many months, for I lost my horse at Tharbad, at the fording of the Great Flood. After that journey and the road I have trodden with this company, I do not much doubt that I shall find a way through Rohan, and Fangorn too, if need be. Then I need say no more, said Celeborn, but do not despise the lore that has come down from distant years, for often it may chance that old wives keep in memory word of things that once were needful for the wise to know. Now Galadriel rose from the grass, and taking a cup from one of her maidens, she filled it with white mead and gave it to Celeborn. Now it is time to drink the cup of farewell, she said. Drink, Lord of the Galadriel, and let not your heart be sad. Sorry. Though night must follow noon, and already our evening draws nigh. Then she brought the cup to each of the company, and bade them to drink in farewell. But when they had drunk, she commanded them to sit again on the grass, and chairs were set for her and for Celeborn. Her maidens stood silent about her, and for a while she looked upon her guests. At last she spoke again. We have drunk the cup of parting, she said, and the shadows fall between us. But before you go, I have brought in my ship gifts, which the Lord and Lady Galadriel now offer you in memory of Lothlórien. Then she called to each in turn. Here is the gift of Celeborn and Galadriel to the leader of your company, she said to Aragorn, and she gave him a sheath that had been made to fit his sword. It was overlaid with a tracery of flowers and leaves wrought of silver and gold, and on it were set in elven runes, formed of many gems, the name Andúril, and the lineage of the sword. The blade that is drawn from the sheath shall not be stained or broken, even in defeat, she said. But is there aught else that you desire of me at our parting? For darkness will flow between us, and it may be that we shall not meet again, unless it be far hence upon a road that has no returning. And Aragorn answered, Lady, you know all my desire, and long held it in keeping the only treasure that I seek. Yet it is not yours to give me, even if you would, and only through darkness shall I come to it. Yet maybe this will lighten your heart, said Galadriel, for it was left in my care to be given to you, should you pass through this land. Then she lifted from her lap a great stone of clear green, set in a silver brooch that was wrought in the likeness of an eagle with outward wings. And as she held it up, the gem flashed like the sun shining through the leaves of spring. This stone I gave to Celebrian, my daughter, and she to hers. Now it comes to you as a token of hope. In this hour, take this name that was foretold for you, Elisar, the elf stone of the house of Elendil. And Aragorn took the stone, pinned the brooch upon his breast, and those who saw him wondered, for they had not marked before how tall and kingly he stood, and it seemed to them that many years of toil had fallen from his shoulders. For the gifts that you have given me, I thank you, he said, O Lady of Lorien, of whom were sprung Celebrian and Arwen Evenstar. What praise could I say more? The lady bowed her head, and she turned then to Boromir, and to him she gave a belt of gold, and to Merry and Pippin she gave small silver belts, each with a clasp wrought with like a golden flower. To Legolas she gave a bow such as the Galadriel used, longer and stouter than the bows of Mirkwood, and strung with a string of elf hair. With it went a quiver of arrows. For you, little gardener and lover of trees, she said to Sam, I have only a small gift. She put it into his hand, a little box of plain grey wood, unadorned save for a single silver ruin upon the lid. Here is a set G for Galadriel, she said, but also it may stand for garden in your tongue. In this box there is earth from my orchard, and each such blessing as Galadriel has still to bestow is upon it. It will not keep you on your road, nor defend against any peril, but if you keep it and see your home again at last, then perhaps it may reward you. Though you should find all barren and laid waste, there will be few gardens in Middle Earth that will bloom like your garden. If you sprinkle this earth, there, then you may remember Galadriel and catch a glimpse far off of Lorien that you have seen only in our winter. For our spring and our summer are gone by, and they will never be seen on earth again, save in memory. Sam went red in the ears and muttered something inaudible as he clutched the box and bowed as well as he could. And what gift would a dwarf ask of the elves? Said Galadriel, turning to Gimli. None, lady, answered Gimli. It is enough for me to have seen the Lady of Galadriel and have heard her gentle words. Hear all ye elves, she cried to those about her. Let none say again that dwarves are grasping and ungracious. Yet surely, Gimli, son of Gloin, you desire something that I could give. Name it, I bid you. You shall not be the only guest without a gift. There is nothing, Lady Galadriel, said Gimli, bowing low and stammering. Nothing unless it is permitted to ask. Nay, to name a single strand of your hair, which surpasses the gold of the earth as the stars surpass the gems of the mine. I do not ask for such a gift, but you commanded me to name my desire. The elves stirred and murmured with astonishment, and Celeborn gazed at the dwarf in wonder, but the lady smiled. It is said that the skill of the dwarves is in their hands rather than in their tongues, she said. Yet that is not true of Gimli, for none have ever made to me a request so bold and yet so courteous. And how shall I refuse, since I commanded him to speak? But tell me, what would you do with such a gift? Treasure it, lady, he answered, in memory of your words to me at our first meeting. And if I ever return to the smithies of my home, it shall be set in imperishable crystal, to be an heirloom of my house, and a pledge of goodwill between the mountain and the wood until the end of days. Then the lady unbraided one of her long tresses, and cut off 3 golden hairs, and laid them in Gimli's hand. These words shall go with the gift, she said. I do not foretell, for all foretelling is now vain. On the one hand lies darkness, and on the other only hope. But if hope should not fail, then I say to you, Gimli, son of Gloin, that your hands shall flow with gold, and yet over you gold shall have no dominion. And you, ring-bearer, she said, turning to Frodo, I come to you last, who are not last in my thoughts. For you I have prepared this. She held up a small crystal phial. It glittered as she moved it, and rays of white sprang from her hand. In this phial, she said, is caught the light of Elendil's star, set amid the waters of my fountain. It will shine still brighter when night is about you. May it be a light to you in dark places, when all their lights go out. Remember Galadriel and her mirror. Frodo took the phial, and for a moment, as it shone between them, he saw her again standing like a queen, great and beautiful, but no longer terrible. He bowed, but found no words to say. Now the lady arose, and Celeborn led them back to the height. A small noon lay on the green land of the tongue, and the water glittered with silver. All at last was made ready. The company took their places in the boats as before. Crying farewell, the elves of Lothlórien with long gray poles thrust them out into the flowing stream, and the rippling waters bore them slowly away. The travelers sat still without moving or speaking. On the green bank near to the very point of the tongue of the Lady Galadriel stood alone and silent. As they passed her, they turned and their eyes watched her slowly, floating away from them. For so it seemed to them. Lothlórien was slipping backward, like a bright ship masted with enchanted trees, sailing on to forgotten shores, while they sat hopeless or helpless upon the margin of the gray and leafless world. Even as they gazed, the silver load passed out into the currents of the great river, and their boats turned and began to speed southward. Soon the white form of the lady was small and distant. She shone like a window of glass upon a far hill in the westering sun, or as a remote light seen from a mountain, a crystal fallen in the lap of the land. Then it seemed to Frodo that she lifted her arms in a final farewell, and far but piercing clear on the following wind came the sound of her voice singing. But now she sang in the ancient tongue of the elves beyond the sea, and he did not understand the words. Fair was the music, but it did not comfort him. Yet as is the way of elvish words, they remained graven in his memory, and long afterwards he interpreted them, as well as he could. The language of that was that of elven song, and spoke of things little known on Middle-earth. I, Rory Lantar Lasi Surinan, Yani Unotime, Ve Ramar Adran, Yani Ve Lente, Yodar Avanir, Mi Oromardi, Lise Miru Vor Eva, and Andune Pala Fardo Telemor, Nu Luini Yasan Tintalar, I Alani, Mario Eretari Lirinen, Siman E Yoma Nin Encantuva. Sorry. Ansi Tintale Varda Oioloseo Ve Fanyar Mariat Elantari Ortane Ar Ilie Tirir Undolave Lambule is a little difficult. Yeah, imagine me reading the Cimmerillion. Ar Sindanoriello Keta Morne E Falmalinar Imbe Met Ar Hisie Antupa Calasiario Miri Oyeloe Si Vanwa Na Vomelo Vanwa Velamar Namariel Nai Hiruvalier Valamar Nai Elie Hiruva Namariel. No, Cimmerillion. Like gold fall the leaves in the wind, long years number less as the wings of trees. The years have passed like swift draughts of sweet mead in lofty halls beyond the west, beneath the blue vaults of Varda, wherein the stars tremble in the song of her voice, holy and queenly. Who now shall refill the cup for me? For now the kindler, Varda, the queen of the stars, from Mount ever white, has uplifted her hands like clouds, and all paths are drowned deep in shadow, and out of a great country darkness lies on the foaming waves between us, and mist covers the jewels of Calasiera forever. Now lost to those from the least of Valimar. Farewell. Maybe thou shalt find Valimar. Maybe even thou shalt find it. Farewell. Varda is the name of that lady whom the elves in these lands of exile name Elberath. Suddenly the river swept round a bend, and the banks rose upon either side, and the light of Lorien was hidden. To that fair land Frodo never came again. The travelers now turned their faces to the journey. The sun was before them, and their eyes were dazzled, for all were filled with tears. Gimli wept openly. I have looked last upon that which was fairest, he said to Legolas, his companion. Henceforward I will call nothing fair unless it be her gift. He put his hand to his breast. Tell me, Legolas, why did I come on this quest? Little did I know where the chief peril lay. Truly Elrond spoke, saying, that we could not foresee that we might meet upon our road. Torment in the dark was the danger that I feared, and did not hold me back. But I would not have come, had I known the danger of light and joy. Now I have taken my worst wound in this parting, even if I were to go this night straight to the Dark Lord. Alas for Gimli, son of Gloin. Nay, said Legolas, alas for us all, and for all that walk the world in these latter days. For such is the way of it, to find and lose, as it seems to those whose boats is on the running stream. But I count you blessed, Gimli, son of Gloin, for your loss you suffer of your own free will, and you might have chosen otherwise. But you have not forsaken your companions, and the least reward that you shall have is that the memory of the Lothlorien shall remain ever clear and unstained in your heart, and shall neither fade nor grow stale. Maybe, said Gimli, and I thank you for your words. True words, doubtless, yet all such comfort is cold. Memory is not what the heart desires. That is only a mirror. Be clear as Caladzaram, or so says the heart of Gimli the dwarf. Elves may see things otherwise. Indeed, I have heard that for them memory is more like the waking world than to dream, not so for dwarves. But let us talk no more of it. Look to the boat. She is too low in the water, but all the baggage in the great river is swift. I do not wish to drown my grief in cold water. He took up a paddle and steered towards the western bank, following Aragorn's boat ahead, which had already moved out of the middle of the stream. So the company went on their long way down the wide hurrying waters, borne ever southwards. Bare woods stalked along either bank, and they could not see any glimpse of the lands behind. Sorry. The breeze died away, and the river flowed without a sound. No voice of bird broke the silence. The sun grew misty as the day grew old, until it gleamed in the pale sky like a high white pearl. Then it faded into the west, and dusk came early, followed by a gray and starless night. Far into the dark, quiet hours, they floated on, guiding their boats under the overhanging shadows of the western woods. Great trees passed by like ghosts, thrusting their twisted, thirsty roots through the mist down into the water. It was dreary and cold. Frodo sat and listened to the faint lap and gurgle of the river, fretting among the tree roots and driftwood near the shore, until his head nodded and he fell into an uneasy sleep. And that ends chapter 13. Next chapter, 19. Actually, I should go back and change the titles, because this is yeah. I had to change the title because it's chapter 9. I accidentally wrote the wrong chapters. We have 2 more chapters left in Fellowship of the Ring. We've left Lorien, and we're on the river. You remember the movies? You remember what happens. So we're encountering elements of the enemy, shall I say. So we're near the end. We're nearing the end of what would be the film if you've only watched the films and not read the books. That's the part we're on right now. So if you've seen the films, you have an idea of what is to come. If you have not, well then brace yourselves, because it is, how do I put this? Visceral, shall we say. Okay. But anyway, so on that note, ladies and gentlemen, tomorrow will be on my YouTube channel will be the Worldwide Weird stream, where I might be by myself, I might be with my co-host Stieg, where we talk about fun news, dumb criminal news, weird news. Basically, it's to take a break from the pop culture cringe during the week and to have a little bit of fun. Thursday, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do a stream or not. If I do, it'll be reading at least 1 chapter of Fellowship of the Ring, but we will see, depending on the schedule Thursday. If not, then definitely we'll be streaming Friday. My plan is to start my first playthrough co-op of Resident Evil 5. My first ever, I should say, playthrough of Resident Evil 5, but it'll be co-op with Cowman at some point Friday evening. So look for that on my Kick and Twitch. I don't know about Saturday. I might try to do a gaming stream in the afternoon and then maybe a watch party in the evening, but we'll see. Again, it depends on the schedule. And Sunday, I should be playing D&D, which you need to remind me possibly. I'd say Friday at the earliest because I don't want to do a D&D story during the reading stream or the Worldwide Weird. So if you can remind me, Friday to go into the D&D session from last Sunday because I forgot to do it yesterday. Because our character, Ms. Muse's characters and myself, our characters went to Australia, and it's an interesting story to tell you guys, and I think you all get a kick out of it. But it would have to be Friday that I'll talk to you guys about it. And then Sunday evening will be basically the St. Patty's Day stream for Talk Nerdy, like the drunk St. Patty's Day stream, basically, as I call it. So basically, super chats. I'll as I said before, I'll take shots and answer questions so long as they do not dox any information, like personal information for myself, as well as don't get too personal, basically. So I will tell you stories of my time in the military and my time at college and so forth, if you are at all curious. But again, those will be basically for super chats this coming Sunday, about 8:30 p.m. Eastern on my channel for Talk Nerdy to Us. So wrestling, or at least Raw, will be at 3 p.m. Eastern the next few weeks. I would imagine also SmackDown also would be earlier because they are in Europe now. But there it is. So that is the schedule for streams moving forward. And so on that note, ladies and gentlemen, have a good rest of your day or evening wherever you are in the world, and I will see you all tomorrow for some weird, fun, dumb criminal type news. Take care, and good night.